Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. On this episode, Area Sales Manager Dan Higgins from the Western Illinois and Wisconsin area joins us with an update on his territory. Hear how added protection with their seed treatments, Starting Line and Starting Line Plus with Saltro and Trunemco are being utilized for early planting in Dan's sales area. Dan talks about the soybeans that work well in his area.
Hi, this is Joe Mershman. Welcome to Mershman Seeds Cup of Joe. Today we have Turk and Ben and Lynn. And Lynn, you have a special guest, right?
All right, so today we have Dan Higgins with us. He's the Area 8 Sales Manager. He is located in Western Illinois and covers the western and northern part of Illinois for us, and as well the newly acquired Wisconsin. Dan, if you want to take it away, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, like you said, my name's Dan, and I have recently acquired the Wisconsin territory, which is a whole different animal than what I am used to. Brings upon an earlier lineup that I get to learn about, so that's pretty exciting. I get to learn a lot from my dealers and on the fly as we're going here. So they call me with questions, and I'm calling them with just as many questions probably. But it's a good working relationship that started to establish with these guys.
So Dan, tell me about, one of the main topics right now everybody's talking about is the weather and planting conditions and where we're all at. You have to have a lot of diversity in your territory right now. Where you're located is Joy, Illinois, Galesburg area, for those that are familiar with that, and you cover, like Lynn said, up into Wisconsin. What's the differences in field conditions right now, and what are kind of the polar opposites? What are you seeing right now?
It's definitely a all over the board type of thing going on around here. I got guys that are running guns blazes that they have no intention of slowing down whatsoever, even with this rain that's coming. And then I got guys that are sitting there waiting, saying it's too early, but going out 8 o'clock this morning, ground temperature is 55 degrees in no-till. It's hard to get some of these guys to either believe in planting this early or to say, hey, why don't we slow down a little bit? Traditionally, the Mercer County area, April 29th is the last day on average of frost. So all these guys that are going pretty heavy, they're putting a pretty big gamble on what could come yet, I guess. My guys up in Wisconsin, that pushes even farther out into the frost date, areas like Dodge County, Wisconsin, that's one of my more northern, I would say. Their last frost day is May 7th, I believe. And I've got guys up there, it's 85 degrees up there. Let's ready to roll, but they're supposed to get an inch of rain, and then it's going to be down into low 30s, high 20s there this next week. So that's a pretty substantial risk on newly planted corn and beans in the first 24 to 48 hours.
Yeah, the imbibitional chilling is something that a lot of guys are talking about right now, and kind of my rule of thumb, and I have a couple different articles here that I have talked about before, but one is from The Ohio State University, and it's talking about chilling concerns on corn, and what they are seeing is anywhere from a 24 to 48 hour period. When you're above 50 degrees in that time frame, you can handle the cold weather after that, but you definitely don't want to be planting into a situation like what you're talking about, Dan, where you would have a sharp, drastic change. If the soil temp isn't already in the 70s and 80s, you don't want that soil temp with cold rain to come in below that 40 degree, 36 degree temperature when it first sucks that cold moisture in. So I'm of the opinion with you as well, and it kind of looks like the cold line is moving a little bit further south than what they were first talking about at the beginning of the week, this past week. So I am in agreement with you that it's good to have some acres planted early, but having all your eggs in one basket can be a concern for the guys, especially as you're moving north.
And corn, as you mentioned, is probably way more of a concern on this. The guys that are planting probably at time of filming now that are planting on Friday with soybeans, we're probably not as nervous, but the corn would definitely be more of a concern because our 48 hour outlook, basically be Friday morning would be the last time you should plant to cover that window by the time the cold comes in.
Yeah, there's always 2 days every year you shouldn't plant. Unfortunately, we don't know those 2 days, and that's, are we in one of those days this, going into this weekend? I'm in the camp that as long as that first moisture that goes into that plant is warm, you're going to be okay. But if you plant and then you get that cold rain, that's when you get in trouble, right, Ben?
Yep.
It's just the first drink of water. If it's ice cold, you got problems.
Right, and I would say like the temperature difference from corn versus soybeans, like what you were talking about, soybeans can kind of dip down into the low 40s, high 30s without really fracturing cells. Corn, you really want to be at that 45, 50, 55 degree, and we had a lot of weather this week that was very
perfect. It's actually, I would say, almost perfect. The other thing too is plant deeper, right? I mean, because the closer you are to the surface, the more variability you have. If you're a little bit deeper, by deeper I just mean normal planting rate, 2 inches, two and a half. Right, Ben?
Yeah. So basically the temperature doesn't fluctuate as fast, and it buys you a little bit more time to get those plants out of the ground.
Dan, is early planting a thing in your area? We talk a lot about guys down south, but up north is a April planting date. Is that progressive guys doing that, or is it just kind of by and large nobody really does anything until May?
It's getting to be more and more popular. There's a lot of guys that are going out and getting second planters so they can at least run at the same time they start planting corn if they don't push their beans earlier. But I would say over the last year to 2 years, it has really gained traction on guys wanting to get out and get beans planted earlier and earlier. They're seeing that bushel bump that you can get from getting out there and planting earlier. That being said, there's always that risk of getting caught too. So that these guys that have got out there this early and got a lot of beans in the ground, they may think twice if we get that later frost and does any damage. I don't know.
Well, that's where seed treatments come into play. Robust rates. Some of the basic seed treatments are going to give you protection until the seed coat cracks because they're not systemic. Using the higher quality products are going to give you a longer window of protection, and then using the more robust rates like we use in Starting Line and Starting Line Plus is really going to pay off to give you protection, because we can get up in 25 days of protection with the robust rates that we have. So you can go underground, and wireworms, they're going to be a problem when it gets cold like this. So there's risks, but boy, the rewards are really nice if you can get that stand.
Oh, absolutely. That's one thing too that I would say is all these guys that are planting early, I wouldn't even have that thought cross my mind that it to be untreated seed. I had a conversation with a guy this morning that just a 20-acre patch, and he was mentioning untreated seed, and I wouldn't even think about putting untreated seed in the ground at this point.
So for clarity, in the Starting Line and the Starting Line Plus are two different seed treatments for those that don't necessarily know what's in either one of those. The Starting Line is our standard seed treatment. It is our F&I, which has 4 modes of action, 4 different fungicides. We have an insecticide, which is a imidacloprid. We have Tripidity ST, which is our biostimulant. That's multiple hormones, amino acids, and some nutrition packed in there around the seed that the seed needs to get out of the ground. We also have in the addition of Heads Up this year. So Heads Up is our white mold and sudden death agent for those acres that don't have above ground symptoms of
which is a biological and stays active in the plant all season.
Yep, that's absolutely correct. It turns genes on that makes the plant more resistant. So all of that, plus you have a Starting Line Plus, is the addition of our Starting Line, which I just talked about, that has Saltro and Trunemco mix. And Saltro is our heavy hitter when it comes to sudden death protection, and the Trunemco is our nematicide that has 2 modes of action. So technically we have 3 modes of action against soybean cyst nematode with the Trunemco and the Saltro, and we have 2 modes of action against sudden death with our Heads Up and our Saltro in our Starting Line Plus. So, and the combination of all of that gives you season-long protection against sudden death and soybean cyst nematode.
Yeah, it's better than anything out there. We're the only company that's putting together a package from 6 different suppliers to put this together. Nothing like it.
What would you say, Dan, your sales are in your territory, north to south? Is there a split? Like, how many guys run Starting Line Plus with the Saltro Trunemco in it versus our basic Starting Line package?
I would say that the majority of everyone who orders treated seed, it's all Starting Line Plus. They see the value in what it adds, and it can more than easily pay for itself in the extra couple bushel that you can get out of planting the Starting Line Plus.
And you have a pretty big presence along the Mississippi, up and down, especially now as we get into the Wisconsin. The Trunemco portion of that, I mean, is that a soybean cyst nematode? Is that something that you fight when you get down along the Mississippi? And is that something that growers have maybe been excited about changing treatments and moving the needle on that aspect?
There has been a lot of excitement over that. I get a lot of talk about the ground crawling every year along some of that bottom ground, and the addition of the Trunemco, that's made a lot of guys more at ease, if nothing else. But they're glad that we're stepping in that direction to further protect them and the problems that they see.
Yeah, that brings us to another important point: is you want Saltro on your soybeans planted this early, particularly going into cold wet, because that's when the infection for sudden death occurs at that crick stage as it's coming out of the ground in these cold conditions.
I would say one more exciting thing about our seed treatment that's definitely going to impact Dan is what are your growers and dealers' thoughts on the addition of Heads Up this year, Dan?
Heads Up is probably the biggest game mover in at least my northern territories, if nothing else. I've got a lot of guys that are talking about how they have consistent white mold problems every year, and they were very pleased to see us add that into it. The struggle to combat some of these problems is getting harder and harder, and everything that we can throw at it is definitely beneficial. I've definitely picked up some ground because of the moves that we have made this year, in sales wise, that guys are excited what we're putting together to offer them.
Yeah, I know that you will have a white mold plot in your territory, maybe one, if not 2 white mold plots that we're going to be evaluating the entire lineup that fits that maturity, because Dan and I have struggled. It's really hard. We can have really good white mold ratings in the book. We can have all the intelligent conversation we want about what the ratings are and who came up with the ratings and how it all works. But you had a field that was a 50 bushel yield loss compared to the APH 2 years ago when you and I were having serious conversations southwest of Chicago. Trying to come up with varieties for these customers, and I think Heads Up is only going to build into that, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's gonna help at least alleviate and level out the playing field, if nothing else. I mean, this disease is very hard to get ahead of, because once you notice it, it's too late anyways. So you need to be very proactive in what you're putting on your seed to help prevent the problems, not try to react to it after it happens.
Gotcha.
I would classify Dan's whole area as kind of a proving ground. If a bean works in his area, it will work everywhere, and it's always probably from your perspective, it is a spot where it adds maybe a few gray hairs and struggles. But if something performs in Dan's area, you've got a pretty good rock star.
Right. So talk about that just a little bit. What are the soil types that you yourself farm in? What are the soil types that you sell into? And what kind of explain what Lynn's diversity is? What he's talking about there.
Well, that's what I would have to say. Every time you say a bean's going to be good, I'm the guy that's going to set out to prove you wrong, I guess. But we're working through it. But the soil diversity is everything you could think of, from sand to clay to loam. I mean, it's everything in between. I had a field personally of my own that I had sampled for the first time from a guy a few years ago. And when he came back with the results, he kind of chuckled at me and he goes, well, he goes, I can see why you see such diverse yields in your field. And I said, why is that? He goes, because you've got every type of soil that you could have in that field. And this is a 39-acre field. I mean, it just, the range from one side to the other is pretty crazy.
The other critical issue that you have is also brown stem rot, particularly as you head up into northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin. You can't farm without a variety that has good tolerance to brown stem rot. So I know the only thing that you really don't fight is iron corrosives. Do you have any high pH environments out there, or am I wrong on that too?
Oh, there gets to be some, but that's not near as a concern as it is in other areas. My territory, you don't have to worry about that too much. The brown stem rot is a pretty big thing, but as long as we stay on the beans that have the resistant gene to it, then we normally don't see as much of a problem. It's the guys that get kind of brave and just plant whatever they want instead. That's when we run into the issue.
Talk to us a little bit about last year and some of the struggles, some of the challenges that the farmers in your area had, and give us a little bit of an overview of how everything worked last year.
Last year, I would say that last year was really nice. There wasn't a lot of issues. We did have some issues with with some of the sudden death and stuff that we were able to work through with our new treatment and stuff. But planning wise, guys were able to get out there and get it in a very good window. And we had very timely rains that we couldn't ask much more for, honestly. It's pretty easy when Mother Nature cooperates to make an ASM look pretty smart on what he's telling you when we get those rains, and it all grows very well.
You had some 100 bushel yields up there in Wisconsin, which is unheard of.
It is. I almost don't even like talking about that. That's a southern trait, I think, not a northern trait. So I'd like it to stick around for a little bit.
Definitely that, when we talk about northeast Iowa, that southwest Wisconsin, northern Illinois, that kind of seemed like this year they got to be the garden spot for the year. When we look at the rain maps and go back and check out how everything came in, it kind of seemed like they all must have went to church more than everyone else. They definitely had the rains.
And because of your diversity, you have wheat acres too, and particularly in Wisconsin, correct?
Yes, the picking up the Wisconsin territory, it more than doubled, I think, my wheat sales for the year. So it's definitely a lot more of a learning curve up there, I guess, too, on their little bit different planting dates of the wheat, and trying to get everything balanced out on that way too. But their wheat numbers were just like bean numbers. I mean, it's just very high and very profitable for the guys that are looking into that rotation. They also have even experimented a little bit with double cropping up there. So that's getting to be a little far north, but some guys are making it work.
Yeah, and that just, you answered the question I was just going to ask, is because, some of the guys, the traditional thinking, the further north you go, is to get as full of a season product as you can because you want to capture the maximum amount of whatever that growing season is. But some of those guys have experimented with the double crop soybean, or some of those guys have experimented with the ultra early lines that we have. And those ultra early lines, I've heard from the growers themselves, 85, 95, 100 bushel wheat, and then being able to slap beans in behind and try to get 20, 25 bushel beans. They're not looking at the double crop yields in the soybeans like what somebody would be south of St. Louis, but they're still penciling that out and keeping a constant growing root mass in the soil the entire time. And it's a big deal for those guys, I think.
Plus with our ultra earlies up north, they tend to be just a little bit taller as we get that direction. So they're cashing in on making an ultra early work as a straw supply, I guess, as well. So they're kind of getting three birds with one stone if they wanted to kind of look at that.
Yep, completely agree.
So Dan, we had a little bit of negativity there talking about some of the struggles, but I know you said you guys were the garden spot. So what varieties do you get really excited about for this coming year, and what excites the growers in your area?
Well, in Wisconsin, it's pretty simple. The name Cheyenne is a pretty big staple up there. All you got to do is mention it, and even if they don't plant Mershman, somebody's at least heard of it because of the numbers it's been kicking out up there. It is a definite go everywhere bean, and I was glad when I picked up Wisconsin. I told Ben that I got some beans that'll work, and that Cheyenne is definitely one of them. In my old territory down here, that in Illinois here, I think the 2.9 is going to be a big bean for me. I think it's got a little more top end yield that we've been looking for, and with this starting line plus package, I think it'll marriage pretty good together and be able to impress some people.
You really had some pretty good luck with some McKinleys as well, didn't you? In that fuller season portion for you.
Yes, the McKinleys, I do like them personally. For me to like a bean personally, as Ben knows, is pretty tough. But it did perform well, and it is one that I can throw out there with pretty good confidence to anybody that it's not going to be a failure whatsoever. It'll run right there with everything else that they've ever seen, and they're not going to be disappointed with that bean.
Good.
It's the only bean that you've probably been cussed at, but it was a good thing.
Yeah, that is very true. I had a guy that he gave me one shot on his farm last year, and that was the only bean I put on there, and that's what he called me back in disbelief. He had some few choice words, but they were all because he was in disbelief that they were doing so good. So he went ahead and ordered that bean again this year. So that was pretty exciting.
We'll take the wins.
Yeah.
We'll always take a win. Always take a win.
All right, Dan. Well, to kind of wrap this up, what makes Dan tick? What do you like to do outside of Mershman's, and what do you have going on, in your family life and stuff going on there?
Hey, before you say anything, I bet you like to deer hunt. I'm just guessing. It's just a wild guess. Just a wild guess.
Yeah, I like to hunt a little bit. A couple of them fall down in front of me every once in a while. I more enjoy seeing my boys go out and spend time with them out there, and keep plugging away at trying to get my wife one, but hasn't quite happened yet. But it will. But no, I have a family farm myself, and then that keeps me pretty busy in the off time here, and then 2 kids and doing 4 sports apiece, so that also keeps me very busy.
Well, that's awesome.
They're a lot younger and a lot more full of energy than I am.
Yeah, you'll definitely have that. So, well, Dan, we appreciate your time today. It's always good to have different insights for guys to be looking at different things. We are going to make you hang around for the corny joke here, unfortunately. So, Joe, why don't you take it away?
Yeah, you have to endure the pain too. Okay. All right. I got one today. A man walked into his doctor's office and asked for an appointment. The receptionist said, "Okay, how about 10 tomorrow?" To which the man replied, "No, I don't need that many." He asked for an appointment. She said 10. Okay. Got to explain them. They're not too good. Anyhow, thanks everyone for watching this week. We hope that your farming operation is going smooth this spring and you're having a safe planting season. We'll see you next week. Take care.